In 878 AD, England teetered on the brink of change and calamity, a year marked by turmoil that would define its future. The period was characterized by relentless Viking invasions that threatened to obliterate Saxon rule, casting a shadow over England's very identity. This era's significance lies in its position as a turning point where Saxon resilience would be tested, and ultimately rallied to preserve the nation. At the heart of this chaos was the relentless advance of Norse warriors who had already seized vast swathes of England. Their incursions were not just military, but also cultural, poised to reshape the religious and social landscape of the land. The Saxons, led by King Alfred the Great, grappled with a dire threat that demanded unity and innovation. Alfred's leadership became crucial in this period, emphasizing the importance of resilience and strategic acumen in the face of existential threats. His reform of military practices and the use of fortified settlements, known as burhs, were pivotal strategies in countering Viking dominance. The significance of this context is illustrated vividly through two key examples. First, the Battle of Edington, where Alfred's forces achieved a decisive victory against the Viking leader Guthrum, is emblematic of Saxon resilience and strategic ingenuity. This victory not only halted the Viking advance, but also led to the Treaty of Wedmore, establishing boundaries that allowed Saxon culture to endure and adapt. Secondly, Alfred's efforts in promoting education and literacy laid the groundwork for a unified English identity, blending Saxon traditions with the influences of their adversaries to fortify a nascent nation against future threats. Support for Alfred's actions comes from historians who view him as a unifying figure, his leadership demonstrating the capacity of strong governance and cultural adaptation in safeguarding a civilization. However, challenges to this narrative exist. Some argue that the Viking presence was not purely destructive. Rather, it brought about cultural and economic exchanges that enriched the Anglo-Saxon world. Furthermore, the portrayal of Alfred as the sole savior can overshadow the contributions of other Saxon leaders and local communities who played vital roles in resisting invasions. This context connects intrinsically to the broader theme of Saxon victory. Recognizing the circumstances of 878 AD enriches our understanding of the Saxon legacy and Alfred's role in it. It underlines that victory was not merely a military success, but a complex interplay of leadership, cultural resilience, and strategic foresight. This intricate web of influences set the stage for the eventual unification of England, illustrating how periods of chaos can forge enduring foundations for future generations. The Viking threat and their invasion strategies were pivotal elements leading up to the Saxon victory in 878 AD, a turning point in English history. The term Viking threat refers to the persistent danger posed by Norse seafarers from Scandinavia, who launched raids and invasions from the late 8th to the 11th century. These Vikings were formidable warriors, known for their speed, agility, and tactical prowess. Their invasion strategies often involved swift, surprise attacks via longships, focusing on coastal monasteries and towns vulnerable to rapid assault, as well as deeper inland incursions. The significance of the Viking threat in 878 AD underscores the dire situation faced by the Saxon kingdoms. At the time, England was not a unified nation, but a collection of smaller kingdoms, making it particularly susceptible to piecemeal conquest. The ability of the Saxons to eventually repel the Vikings was critical in maintaining not only their cultural identity, but also laying the groundwork for a unified England. A specific example of the Viking threat can be seen in the establishment of the Danelaw in the eastern part of England, where Viking law and culture were imposed, directly challenging Saxon authority. Another example is the Great Heathen Army, a large coalition of Norse warriors that invaded England in 865 AD, culminating in significant territorial gains until the pivotal year of 878. Support for this concept often highlights the resilience of the Saxons, notably under King Alfred the Great, who orchestrated a strategic military response that pushed back the invaders. Potential challenges to this narrative might highlight the integration and influence of Viking culture in regions they controlled, suggesting a more complex relationship between the invaders and the local population than merely that of oppressor and oppressed. Furthermore, some historians argue that the so-called threat also facilitated advancements in defense strategies and unification efforts among the Saxon kingdoms. This Viking threat and their tactics were instrumental in catalyzing broader efforts towards English unification and resistance, directly influencing military and political strategies. By overcoming the dire threat posed by the Viking invasions, the Saxons not only safeguarded their territories, but also set a foundation for the consolidation of England as a singular entity. The eventual victory in 878 reinforced the idea that the Saxons could withstand their powerful adversaries, reshaping the geopolitical landscape of the British Isles and setting the stage for future nation-building efforts. King Alfred the Great's leadership and military tactics were pivotal in the Saxon victory over the Vikings in 878 AD, a turning point that arguably saved England from potential Viking domination. Alfred, then the King of Wessex, demonstrated remarkable resilience and strategic acumen in warfare, which preserved the autonomy of Saxon England during a time of immense threat. Alfred's leadership was characterized by his adaptability and capacity to unite his people. His significance during this period cannot be overstated, as his strategic decisions directly contributed to the victory at the Battle of Edington, where his forces managed to defeat the Viking army led by Guthrum. This victory was not just a military success, but also led to the Treaty of Wedmore, where Guthrum converted to Christianity and withdrew to East Anglia, marking a temporary cessation of Viking threats to Wessex. Two specific examples highlight Alfred's military prowess. First, during the winter of 878, when Viking forces had overrun much of Wessex, Alfred retreated to the marshes of Athelney. From this seemingly precarious position, he reorganized his forces, gathering a sufficient army to launch a counterattack. Secondly, his development of the burghs system, a network of fortified towns, effectively secured Wessex against further Viking encroachments and facilitated a more rapid and organized military response. Alfred's principles and tactics have been lauded not only in historical accounts, but also in modern leadership analysis, with some historians noting his ability to inspire and rally a disparate group of Saxons. However, the debate around Alfred's success includes an alternative viewpoint considering the role of luck and circumstance. Some argue that internal strife within the Viking ranks and logistical difficulties diminished Guthrum's campaign, which may have skewed the outcomes in favor of the Saxons. The essence of Alfred's leadership and tactics connects deeply with the broader narrative of English resistance and identity formation. Under Alfred's influence, the concept of a unified English nation began to take shape, with shared cultural and religious identity emerging from the crucible of conflict. This foundational period influenced subsequent generations as Alfred's successors continued to reclaim and consolidate territory, thereby setting the stage for the eventual unification of England. In summary, King Alfred's leadership and military strategies during the pivotal year of 878 AD had profound consequences for England's survival and future trajectory, illustrating how decisive leadership and innovative defense mechanisms can alter the course of history. The Battle of Edington, fought in 878 AD, was a pivotal moment in English history that significantly influenced the future of England. This clash saw King Alfred the Great lead his Saxon forces to a decisive victory over the Danish Viking invaders, securing the existence of what would eventually become modern England. At its core, the Battle of Edington represents not just a military triumph, but a turning point in the struggle for control between the indigenous Saxon kingdoms and the formidable Viking forces that had terrorized the region. The importance of Edington lies in its outcome and the broader implications for English history. By defeating the Vikings, Alfred not only halted the advance of their conquests, but also maintained Saxon dominance over the land. This victory allowed Alfred to regroup and fortify his forces, eventually leading to the Treaty of Wedmore. This truce established a clear boundary between Saxon and Viking territories, preserving much of southern England under Saxon control. The long-term impact of this is profound. Had the Saxons lost at Edington, England might well have transformed into a predominantly Norse culture, fundamentally altering its future historical trajectory. As real-world reflections of Edington's significance, one can consider the establishment of Alfred's system of burhs, fortified settlements that became essential in repelling further Viking incursions and laid the groundwork for England's later defensive strategies. Additionally, Alfred's victory and subsequent reforms in law, military organization, and education were catalysts for the cultural and intellectual revival known as the Alfredian Renaissance. Despite the celebrated outcome, the Battle of Edington is not without its controversies. Some historians argue about the exact location of the battle, with multiple sites proposed, leading to debates about its historical accuracy. Furthermore, differing interpretations of the Vikings' intentions, whether they sought outright conquest or merely plunder, add complexity to the narrative. These questions highlight the challenges of studying such a distant historical event. The victory at Edington connects deeply to the broader topic of Saxon resilience and military strategy, during a time when England's political landscape was fragmented and fraught with external threats. It exemplifies the Saxons' ability to unify under a strong leader and adapt their tactics in the face of existential danger, setting a precedent for future English unification. Ultimately, Edington is a testament to the power of strategic leadership in shaping the destiny of a nation.